Welcome back to our geotechnical journey down under. Today, we are discovering the mysteries hidden in the vast expanse of available records when it comes to subsurface investigations. Have you ever wondered how we figure out what's beneath our feet before building something massive? How do we make sure our structures won't collapse? And what tools do we use to uncover the secrets hidden underground? Stick around, because in this video, we are diving deep into the fascinating world of geotechnical investigations. By the end of this video, you'll understand how we gather crucial information from the land, the documents we rely on, and the high-tech tools that help us get the job done right. Let's get started.